Hi there, this is Dr. Laura Ervin-Kassab, and today we are doing a quick interview with Dr. Matthew Love. We are both from San Jose State University, and this interview is about integrating assistive technology in both online and blended environments. So thank you, Matthew, for joining us today. I'm going to move us into the screen here so everyone can see us. If you'd like to say hello.
Hi, everyone.
Great. So the first question that we have is, what kinds of questions should educators be asking themselves about using assistive technology options for lessons?
Yeah, so that's a great question. What I would recommend teachers do is consider assistive technology like they would any other tool in their classroom. Like you said, whether it's online, blended, or face-to-face, everything we do is going to be guided by the standards or practices outlined in our content areas. So whatever level you teach at, there's some form of standards that are going to guide you. So what you want to ask yourself first is, what is the standard requiring students to know and be able to do? So what are the knowledge and skills that they're going to have to develop in that lesson or unit of instruction that you're providing? And then as you're considering those things, as an expert of your content, pedagogy, and your students, you might want to identify what barriers exist for students being able to demonstrate their learning of those standards, and then consider how might you address those barriers. So thinking about, what are the knowledge targets? What are the skills targets? How might students stumble when being asked to demonstrate their knowledge? A lot of times students can have acquired skills and acquired knowledge, but there's some barrier to them presenting that. So you want to consider, what tools do you have currently available to you? And the example I typically give is, think about English language arts or a writing assignment. Your standards in that are going to tell you that students either need something, write something, or demonstrate their knowledge through a speaking and listening activity. If we focus in on writing, you'll think about, what tools do I have readily available to me? And for some students, where might barriers exist? And if you think about writing, a lot of us have an online suite, whether it's Microsoft Office or Google Docs. How might I provide them something to organize their thoughts? Maybe it's a graphic organizer, an outline of how they might structure their response, or how do I make text-to-speech options available to them? And then as you consider what tools are currently available to you, consider, how might I implement them in my lessons? How might I make them available to students? And then, do students need guidance and practice with using those tools as well?
Excellent. And I'm just going to ask a quick follow-up. So that idea of providing students with guidance on learning the tools, do you think it's appropriate as an educator online for me to arrange, like, in advance, a one-on-one session or a small group session with the students who will most need to use that assistive technology, and how to use it so they can be ready in advance? Or how would you suggest I incorporate that into my teaching?
Yeah, so there's a lot of considerations you want to make, right? So
Hmm.
assistive technology is typically developed for a small subset of the population to use to be able to access certain activities, right?
Right.
However, if you think about it, all of us use assistive technology every day. So even though it was developed for someone um, who might have different needs than we do, all of us use assistive technology. So think about your smartphone. We all use text to speech. We all use, a screen reader at times. So I think you can take a variety of approaches, but you want to consider, is an approach I'm going to take going to single a student out or make them stand out? We don't want to ostracize a student simply because they use assistive technology. And if we think about universal design for learning, making options available for everybody, rising tides raise all boats. So, there might be a student that we consider, might not need assistive technology, but making it available to them could have typically unseen benefits. So I think you have a variety of options. You can host small group interactions. So if you're online, having a conversation like we are one-on-one.
Mhm.
Small group, again, consider, is holding a small group going to ostracize students?
Yeah.
What I would recommend is, if possible, and I know, availability of tools and licenses for some assistive tech could limit you, but if possible, maybe just host an asynchronous event where you record how to use it and make it available to all students. That way everyone has access to it. And for the students who really need it, it's still there for them, and you might guide them in the direction of, hey, you should do this, it'll help you out. So kind of navigating that at the appropriate level that you teach.
Awesome. So then that leads me to my next question. As an educator, um, how do I even find these assistive technologies to be able to integrate them into my lessons?
Right. So I have some guidance and then some places that I'm going to go ahead and send people watching this to. So the cool thing with assistive technology is, like we said, we use it all the time without even knowing it. So a lot of tools have built-in options. So whether it's a desktop computer, a smartphone, or a mobile device like a laptop, there's accessibility options built into that. So if you go into settings, there's going to be accessibility options. And just focusing on the two largest providers being Apple and Microsoft devices and Google devices. If you go to their websites, they have great guides for accessibility. You're typically looking for an icon. It's a person standing with their arms spread out, and that's going to tell you accessibility options. So it'll tell you, are screen readers available, alternative text. So if there's a picture on the screen and somebody has a visual impairment, it'll tell them what that looks like. If someone has a hearing impairment or they're deaf, subtitles will be available. So it'll tell you how to use those things. But if you're looking for classroom applications and how you might embed that stuff in your own classroom, here are two places that you can go to that I think are really user-friendly. The first one is the Quiet List. It's quality indicators for assistive technology. It's at quiet.org. And that's almost like a social media platform of sorts for educators interested in using assistive technology in their classroom. So it brings together educators, administrators, and researchers in the field of assistive technology. And there's forums there that say, here are some ideas that I have for implementing assistive technology. Someone will say, here was my experience. So, think about social media communities of practice, professional learning communities where people are sharing ideas. A lot of that is housed at the Quiet website. And then the other one you want to check out is the National Center on Accessible Educational Materials. That'll tell you, it'll give you guidance for preventing yourself from creating barriers to students inadvertently. Sometimes we'll post things, and I'm probably guilty of it as well. I'll take out the probably, I am guilty of it as well. You'll post things that present barriers to students without you really even knowing it. So whether it's a document that's inaccessible to all students, or a video that isn't, doesn't have supports for students with visual impairments or hearing impairments, the National Center on Accessible Educational Materials is housed in CAS, the folks that purvey a lot of the universal design for learning research tools and technologies. So there's a lot of credibility. There's a lot of good ideas that kind of synergize in that place. So to prevent yourself from creating barriers to students inadvertently, I direct you there. So two good resources to consider checking out.
Excellent. Those are both awesome recommendations, and I think I will be checking those out after our podcast. Our final question for today is just a nice general one. What advice would you give to educators? And coming to this channel, we have preschool, kindergarten through 12th grade, and university professors. So in general, what kinds of advice would you give about using educational or assistive technology to help students learn?
Yeah, so a couple recommendations I would give. The first one being, don't try and retrofit face instruction into online environments. consider them as separate areas that require their own special pedagogies. You still want to provide the things that work for students. So that's, direct instruction, opportunities for active engagement, and you want to guide students in doing the tasks that you want them to be. But understand those look different in online and face-to-face environments, which kind of leads me into the considerations you should make for the constraints and affordances of the environments that you're teaching in. The constraints being what are you limited by, and then the affordances being what are the extra opportunities provided teaching online or face-to-face, vice versa. So what I want you to consider when you're teaching online is, Laura and I are on a face-to-face call. I have a video camera. Can I model some things? Yes, we have a PowerPoint. We're narrating over it. But is that necessarily as powerful as being able to use maybe teacher proximity in how you walk around and interact with students? Are you allowing students to engage in small group discussions? Academic discourse, huge part of any classroom. So it's how am I using the features that are available to me and how might I be limited to them? So chat functions, breakout rooms, um, some virtual meeting applications like this will allow you to put up polls, but how are you using, all of those things at your disposal? But how comfortable are you embedding them within your own pedagogy and your own teaching style? So really, finding what comfort zone, how are you addressing, some of the barriers that might exist to students, but thinking about the constraints, what barriers might exist for students in an online environment, and how are we mitigating those things? And then the final piece of advice I would give is just be clearly defined in what you're doing, be super explicit, and have an idea of why you're using technology. So, in our current situation, we're kind of mandated to, right? But hopefully you're taking this as a situation where you're identifying where you can use technology in the future and just be really explicit about who am I using technology for? Why am I using technology? When am I going to use it? And what am I going to assess from it? So think about all standards-based instruction. Any tool you're going to use in a classroom, you have to determine who am I using it for? Why am I using it? So who? It's going to be your students.
Right.
Why? What part of the standard are you addressing, or what part of the, thing that you're held to meeting are you addressing through the technology? And then how are you going to use it, and how are you going to assess what students learn? That would be my biggest piece of advice for you.
Thanks again for joining us today. And I'd like to thank everybody who's watching. For those of us watching, please remember that none of us is as strong as all of us. So post resources, ideas, what you're finding is working in the comments below, and consider accessibility and feasibility. And again, thank you, Dr. Love, for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Excellent. Have a great day.
You too.